not true. That's impossible.
Search your feelings. You know it to be true. Fuck you!
Hello, folks. Tonight we're going to have story time with Forrest. And tonight Forrest is going to talk about Ed Big Daddy Roth.
In the end, we're all just chalk lines on the concrete, drawn only to be washed away. For the time that I've been given, I am what I am.
I remember back being a child and seeing this stuff, Fink and posters, stickers, decals such as this, which this is a vintage 60s decal that I have had for quite a long time. I've seen this stuff as a kid forever. My father I came from a family that, my dad was a hot rodder. He loved building high performance engines and putting them in. And anyway, I followed suit, obviously. So Fink has been a big thing for me. It's always been in my life somewhere. And people nowadays don't even know what you're talking about when you're talking about Fink. I have one of these figurines, a little foam guy. He sits on the dashboard, and people see that and they got no clue. So basically what we're going to talk about is the creation of Ed Roth, and this was just one of his creations, and they were a comical type of thing, obviously, but what you normally see them in is you'd see them in some type of drawing that protruded their body out of some type of high performance hot rod, usually the old muscle cars, and everything was much exaggerated. The wheels were huge, the thing was doing a wheelie, leaving smoke, giant gear shifts, giant engines coming out of the cars, and a lot of these things were taken and put on t-shirts and posters and such. So Ed Roth, he got his start as being in the cartoony type of thing. He was kind of an odd child, but it played out well for him. And some of his exploits, he was also a photographer, and as a photographer, being in this type of rat rod type of hot rod type of environment, he encountered bikers of the day. We're talking, the 60s. And what he would do is he'd take photographs. And these photographs he would use as still life pictures. And then he'd put little sayings under them. And, basically would sell them. I mean, he had their permission to use them. But there was a bike club that, I can't say who it was. For obvious reasons, but it's a known club. They caught a little offense toward it. They thought that he was making money on their pictures, and they wanted a cut. And Ed Roth wasn't a pushover. You think of most cartoonists and stuff and being like little geeks and things like that. Ed Roth was kind of a tough guy at the same time, and they showed up at his studio where he was producing these things, and some of the bikers had firearms, and they wanted some restitution, and his employees at the time, they defended themselves, and in the middle of the skirmish, Ed Roth said, "You know what? You and me talking to the president of the bike club. If you beat me, I'll pay you. If I beat you, you leave me alone." And so there was a large fight that broke out between the two. And eventually, at the end of it, Ed Roth became the victor. And the bike club left, and he paid them nothing. But it was so souring to him because, he was doing this. This was a love of his. This is something that, has always been in his life, between drawing and photographs. He decided to totally get away from that whole thing as far as photographs go. And he started, more cartooning. He was also very, very well known for his work in prototype cars. He would come up with drawings and these cars were very futuristic. And some of these cars were actually picked up by some builders, engineers, and they engineered them and actually made the prototype, which were then in turn bought by Mattel, and there was some of the first Hot Wheels that were produced were actually Ed Roth's design. They were miniatures of his cars that he had actually designed himself. So Ed Roth had his hands in a lot of different places, and you know, such things as, you know, Rat Fink being his probably his most well known. You know, there was other little gasser monsters that he would also draw, but Rat Fink was his best known out of all of them. Anytime you saw the green rat, you thought of Ed Roth. So, you know, this little guy here, it's a rendition of something. It wasn't originated by Ed Roth, but it's got the giant eyeballs. You know, Ed Roth used to draw these things with a big bloodshot eye with wings on it flying around. And you know, I mean, this thing's got stick shifts in its hand. I mean, it's definitely based on, you know, his thoughts and designs. And you know, this type of stuff is really cool. If you can get your hands on some of his actual originals, they're worth thousands of dollars. So I just kind of want to end this whole thing on saying that you know, Ed Roth was ahead of his time. He passed away in 2001, and you know, we lost a great person. He wasn't an artist for comic books or, you know, cartoonist, but you know, the cartoons and things that he did, I don't even know if I even mentioned it. He did some really top-notch, bizarre pinstriping, and which reminds me of another story. In my top line of work, I got sent out to an Antioch address, and I ran into my customer, and I came to his back of his house, and he had his garage open, and his garage was just full of all this pinstripe type of design and this way out, you know, and I'm going, man, this is like Ed Roth stuff. And the guy stepped back and he said, Ed Roth? I go, yeah, Big Daddy Ed Roth. He goes, you know about Big Daddy Ed Roth? I'm going, yeah. I go, in my service van, I got a Rat Fink sitting right on my dashboard. And he had to stop everything he was doing. And he ran out to the front of the street, and he looked actually in my truck. And he ran back and he said, you weren't kidding. He goes, you know what? He goes, I was Big Daddy's protege. I was the one that, while he was doing all this stuff, I learned all this stuff. I'm going, so you're telling me that all this pinstriping and things that you do, you learned from Big Daddy? He said, absolutely. He goes, he showed me some pictures that actually had his photograph with Ed Roth. I think this gentleman's name was Robert Williams, but it was a job. It was a job. I do heating and air. I went out to do this guy's air conditioner, and it just so happened I rubbed shoulders with somebody that was actually very personal with Ed Roth, and it showed. This guy was a pinstriper, and you know, we're talking, he was probably somewhere around my parents' age, but he still had long hair, and you know, by the smell of the garage, it smelled like pot, and you know, I mean, it was just that type of thing. It was really cool. So you know, that's some stories that I, you know, like to share. It's really close to my heart. I don't know why. Maybe it's just because it brings back me being a kid. Speaking of being a kid, when I was a kid, instead of baseball cards, they came out in the late 60s, early 70s with these cards. They're called odd rods. And what they were is they consisted of about 6 cards that were decals inside with a piece of bubble gum. And all these cards were these monstrosities of some type of creature, and they were all in these massive hot rods, smoking tires, giant gear shifts, engines pouring out of the hood, and it was just cool. If I had enough brains, I would have kept them at that time and saved them because they go for some money now. But I would stick them all over my bicycle, and they were cool. They were so cool. And anyway, it's probably just some memorabilia, but it means something to me. So those are some Ed Roth stories. God bless you, Ed Roth.